But just to kind of understand this point for everybody that's listening, and even for myself, to be honest with you. So we go back to sort of investing into NVIDIA or Facebook, and hoping to beat inflation, but I'm perpetuating the same system, if you will, so whatever. Or I could invest into XYZ Bitcoin company, Anchor Watch, I mean, whatever you name it, right? Whatever you put on the line. The mechanism is the same. I'm still investing my money, whether that be dollars or Bitcoin, into a company, hoping to beat inflation. I'm guessing what you're saying is the difference is how I'm measuring that money. Am I measuring it in US dollars, or am I measuring my return in Bitcoin?
Yeah. So in NVIDIA, their free cash flows are in the dollars that are being diluted. And so your entire investment is in the debasing currency. And in this, it is not. So if you're creating, so what I think is happening in our companies, and some of the companies, if you see and by the way, and this isn't just our fund, let's say there's lots of funds in this space, at least the Bitcoin only funds that understand this. You're in venture, you can actually get venture returns on top of a venture asset.
So you're getting Bitcoin returns as opposed to
exactly.
Returns.
So our companies are by creating the enabling foundations of the things that drive, just similar to the internet. But if you owned a piece of the internet, and then the returns, and we're collecting more Bitcoin because of the value that they were creating. And if you see some of the rates of the growth of the companies, measure in their balance sheets moving up by acquiring more Bitcoin because it's denominated in that, and their transactions are based in it. You have an underlying asset that I like to look at it as it's not going up forever. All prices are falling against it forever. But now you're collecting more of that underlying asset. So you can, by having successful companies. So I believe we're going to have venture returns on top of a venture type asset.
Right.
So when I think about that, I think, and I can't believe everybody's not here. I can't believe there's not more people understanding this because I can prove what I just said. Because it's repriced every other asset class over the last
the critic would say over
years.
what time frame, right? Obviously, over the last 15 years, it certainly has. Over the last 2 years, it hasn't, right? So,
but any 4-year cycle, it has.
right. And
Any 4-year cycle.
obviously, as a venture investor, like we're thinking long term, 7 to 10 years, typically at a minimum, right? So to your point, every 4 years it has. And so if you're thinking, and I say all the time, I mean, if you're marketing your portfolio to market on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, like you're never going to make it. Like Charlie Munger said, the big money's made not in the buying and the selling, but in the waiting, right? So waiting for that to develop.
Yeah, and play that forward. But we have a system that you're in measuring your returns every day in the other system, because it forces you to do so because it's debasing. So people are trying to store their wealth, and most of their wealth is stored in the system that's debasing. It's insane, right? And I think when I think about risk return, I think even same as an entrepreneur, I think the best entrepreneurs are actually aren't risk takers like people think they are. I think they're really great risk allocators, and the difference is they look at the risk of where they are now versus the new and what they're going to do. And so today, when people are looking at Bitcoin, they're looking at the risk of the new, and they haven't done the work to understand it. And they think their own system has no risk, when all of the risk is in the existing system. So what you're having is terrible risk allocators. And then as they get more, as the system paralyzes them through more fear, right? And you hear the WEF, and they yell at it all the time. And all of these things are capturing their attention, making them even worse risk allocators, because they're trying to protect their money in the exact same thing that's being debased.
Right. So Bitcoin is repricing everything. I go back to another quote from Ludwig von Mises, and I believe he said that in economics, there's no such thing as a constant. And so we always had like this commodity money. And so whether we're measuring things in oil or gold, there's no constant there. Like the supply, the demand, the technology changes that constantly. But now we have it, right? Now Bitcoin has a fixed limit supply. So for the first time, we have a neutral asset that does have a fixed supply. So he was right at the time. Now it's different. And so to your point that you're making, it's starting to reprice everything. And if you have a long enough vision, and you think at least in 4-year cycles, if not longer, it has been historically been repricing things. You feel strongly that it will, as do I. It looks like even Larry Fink thinks it will as well, which is pretty interesting. But there's one thing that you keep saying. Nothing's guaranteed in this life. And you keep saying, if it stays decentralized and secure. I listened to you sort of debate this out with George Gammon, another friend of mine. Yeah. He has a little bit hard time sort of wrapping his head around that part, I think. But you had to keep saying over and over and over that decentralized and secure. So that seems to be the risk factor in your mind. So this is almost certain as long as those two things stay true.
Yeah.
So
and if you say what George would say, and George is fantastic, and I think really really sharp on how the existing system works, and sharp on history as well of how these things got co-opted. And he would use, well, human nature won't let it. It will centralize it. And the question I have is how. How? Because as more people understand this, and remember, this is different than gold. It can't get centralized like gold. You can self-custody this asset yourself, and you can run your own node. And so what he says is, well, governments will take it over. And the question you ask is how, and to what end? Because let's just imagine this plays forward as it's playing. Because you really have to think about, if that's true, what would specifically happen to be able to break that. And so the governments, let's say they're going to print more money to be able to make their currency, and they're going to lock the doors, and they're going to Yellen and Warren and everything else, and they're going to conspire and make Bitcoin self-custody illegal in the US. So if that happened, and it happened all over the world at the same time, yes, then that would for a time, the price would fall of Bitcoin. But what it would signal to the world, everyone, is you better move faster on Bitcoin. And as price fell, more people would self-custody. And I think it would, just like in other regions where you lock down a currency and you say there's capital controls on my currency, the currency goes underground. And there's a black market currency that actually moves faster, and it is the real price. The free market is the real price.
Right.
And you have a Ponzi. So every single one of these things can't actually happen by the free market unless everyone in the world says, yep, I want to live in a cage.
Right.
Nobody would do that. It just wouldn't happen. So now let's say that, what does it look like, to George's point, or to other people who question? So what that would mean is, as the currency units inflate faster, Bitcoin is still repricing the world, right? And then what ends up happening is every country competes for labor and capital, the best people and the best. And so as this starts to happen around the world, why would it look any different in the future than it's always looked, competing for labor and capital? It's just more of the Bitcoiners will have the capital.
Yeah. And
more of the great talent will be on the Bitcoin layer, building kind of abundance for the future on an honest ledger, which be high demand in regions that say, we're gonna build a free market here.
The game theory, right? The chance, the odds, the probability of all the governments of the world all co-opting and deciding at the same time is very slim. I thought it would be actually impossible. Obviously, seeing what happened during the COVID pandemic lockdown made me, unfortunately, think a little bit otherwise. It was pretty well coordinated across the world simultaneously. So that was a shock to my thinking. So I have to kind of keep that in mind. But game theory is there, and so to your point, if they did it in the West, if you will, Canada, the US, UK, etc., you still might have El Salvador or Argentina now at this point or whatever, and then they're going to attract the best and the brightest, kind of to the point that you're making. So you sort of have that, but. Maybe some of the other risk factors, if we just kind of want to play this out a little bit, because again, trying to think, will it stay decentralized and secure? Potentially, BlackRock taking over Bitcoin Core developers, putting bad malicious code in, something like that. Now we run nodes, so we don't have to accept those updates, right?
But again, I think all of these things like that, we're used to thinking these giant organizations that control us, and they're going to control us, and you make them stronger with your own thinking by allowing that to happen. And the people that are moving to Bitcoin and spending their time in this, and by the way, I'm not even talking about what's being built on top, that if you were some of those people trying to do this, you have no idea what's coming. No idea. Like how fast this is exploding. If you think about Fediment and some of the stuff, the regulation is chasing where this might have been 4, 5, 6, 8 years ago.
Yeah, they can't keep up.
Not where it is today and what's happening. And as the more and more people who understand why freedom matters start to vote with their time and money and energy for freedom, instead of saying, I can't do anything because those other people are going to control me, they take the power from those people. Right. That's the repricing event that is happening. So BlackRock looks so big because our pension funds hold their money in BlackRock, because BlackRock has inside ball on the financial system, and it's the only way they can have a return because of the inside ball. And without inside ball in the financial system, BlackRock gets smaller. And where does the money go to? It goes to you. Right? It goes to Bitcoin holders that are repricing BlackRock too. And so for the life of me, I can't understand people that say, I can't do this and I'm going to spend all my time for fear. Well, they make the thing that they want to happen, that they don't want to happen faster to them. Right. It's ludicrous. Yeah. Where they're a node in the network. They're a node in this network. And good luck convincing me otherwise.
Yeah, and they're literally giving money to a company that's working against their own best interest.
And I'm not talking about in the ETF. I'm not talking about anything else. But through their pension fund, through all of their actions and everything else, they're all of the people at WEF right now, right, are funded by this extraction of wealth from the same people that are yelling at it.
I want to jump into Egodeath. So you said just a minute ago, sort of when I talked about the whole BlackRock thing, you said if people only knew what was being built, and they would realize that the government's years behind where these builders are going. So I want to talk about that. Let's talk about Egodeath. You just announced that you're starting a fund number 2, $100 million, big number. So one, I'm guessing that there's massive appetite for that, that you're seeing that. So tell me about the appetite. 2, there's massive opportunity. So there's more opportunities that you want to get into. And then maybe 3, you can tell us about some of these, and you don't have to name specifics, but what are some of these things that maybe are running light years in front of where these regulators are?
Yeah. So, one, the thesis of the first fund, like many of the other Bitcoin-only ventures, but the thesis of the first fund was I thought there was this massive asymmetry of knowledge. That Bitcoin was this decentralized and secure bedrock that couldn't scale for a long time, and that is what made the value. So all you had to do was hold on to it. And you were creating value. So obviously in a free market, that if it was decentralized and secure and you couldn't scale it, and everyone was getting rich by holding Bitcoin, everyone else would naturally create other coins, using Bitcoin's growth to say, my coin is better than that coin because it does X. Right? It's just a total natural, that would be what the market would look like. Right. We saw this playing out. and again, it still probably looks like that today. So the thesis at the time was, people haven't done the work on Bitcoin on why it's a different asset class completely, and it's repricing everything else. And until they do that work, they're at a massive disadvantage, and they're going to invest in all of this kind of shit coins and nonsense. And all of those things over time will go to zero. Every other thing other than Bitcoin will go to zero, because you would never use a blockchain, essentially a high-cost database, if it wasn't decentralized and secure. You'd just use a database, right? So you'd never do that. And then at the same time, because a blockchain is a slow, inefficient database, and why would the only use case is the decentralized insecurity, essentially the ledger of money.
Right.
And is the biggest use case on the planet because money is manipulated.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing. So when people say it doesn't have a use case, have you looked at how big and bloated governments are? Have you looked at regulation? Have you looked at all of the things that extract wealth from you? That's what it gives back to you. It's the biggest use case that our world has ever seen, and you can't see it right before your eyes. So
let me play a clip real quick here of Jamie Dimon at Davos saying it doesn't have a use case, but then I think articulating the use case for it. Let me play this clip real quick.
Blockchain is real. It's a technology. We use it. It's going to move money. It's going to move data. It's efficient. We've been talking about that for 12 years too, and it's very small. Okay, so I think we've wasted too many words in that. Cryptocurrencies, there are 2 types. There's a cryptocurrency which might actually do something. Think of a cryptocurrency as an embedded smart contract in it, and then we can use it to buy and sell real estate and move data. That may have value.
The idea of tokenizing.
Tokenizing things that you do something with. And then there's one which does nothing. I call it the pet rock, the Bitcoin or something like that. And so on the Bitcoin, there's, first, and I'm not trying to make a joke here. There are use cases. AML, fraud, anti-money laundering, tax avoidance, sex trafficking. Those are real use cases, and you see it being used for hundreds, maybe $50 or $100 billion a year for that. That is the end use case.
He said it's only used for basically crime, right? He said it's avoiding sanctions, AML, KYC stuff. I think he said, sex trafficking, fraud, and it's just a bunch of people trading between themselves. Yeah. That's exactly right. It's the work outside of the sanctioned, basically everything is sanctioned at this point. And yes, so we can trade between ourselves. Exactly.
So I suspect Jamie Dimon is just a highly paid actor. And he's highly paid from the money that he skims off the top from that should be in your pocket. Right. That's what ends up happening, because he sits at the top of a system that must steal the productivity that should flow to society in the form of lower prices by his space in the system. So what would a highly paid actor in that system say about a system that gives you back your freedom and power? Right? Because it takes so of course.
But my point is he was basically saying the only use case for Bitcoin would be so you could have freedom and power that the state couldn't have. I mean, he was making the case for it inadvertently, right? But anyway, I'm taking you sort of off your thesis for Egodeath and going the first.
Yeah, no, but again, that's what you're up against, and that's what the world is looking at with all of, and it's not just Jamie Dimon, it's all of the system. So if you think about regulation, if you think about regulation today, I've said this many times, but you have regulation to protect your money on top of a system designed to steal your money.
Yeah.
Right. What would that look like? Right. Let's just be really honest. Like, the free market is deflationary. And that's a big topic. The natural state of free market is deflation. It's so big, it breaks your brain. So if you can say that and understand that, and then go back and say, but I'm going to live in this other world and price from that other world, then it's your own fault that the world looks like it is.
From that viewpoint, the regulation doesn't protect your money from a system trying to steal it. The regulation actually protects them to be able to continue to steal your money, because it forces me to keep my money in a system that's rent seekers in every area, as opposed to letting me use it freely.
Why do you think big tech is trying so hard to regulate AI? Why do you think? Why do you think drug companies look like they do? Why do you think food companies look like they're big agriculture? Why do you think it's been co-opted by regulation? Because regulation protects the monopoly. It doesn't protect you. Why do you think regulation is on top of money? Because it protects the monopoly of money, not you. Right. The entire system is, and just look at the evidence. Every single industry has been driven this way. Why? Because prices fall to the marginal cost of production in a free market. What is the marginal cost of production of a line of code? Zero. Yeah. What's the marginal cost of production of a line of code created by other lines of code where AI is going? Zero. Right. The only way they can drive the prices up and create the monopoly is through regulation, scaring you that they will protect you from the very same thing that steals the thing becoming free for you. Yeah. Yeah. So that is the free market. That's what it looks like. And the regulation on top of it makes it not a free market. And that whole thing is getting worse and worse and worse. And people are stuck in that fear loop, making it worse. The only thing that can stop it is something that has no counterparty risk to the existing system outside, decentralized and secure. So that was our take. People were so misunderstanding this asset class. They hadn't done the work. They hadn't understood how this is the first time in history that this is something like this has existed. And we felt sure that it would become more decentralized and more secure over time, which it is. And then we said, now there's, with Lightning and other things emerging on top, you can scale in layers like a protocol, like the internet scaled in layers, and there's going to be more and more ability to be built on top. And that's going to turn into, that over time is going to turn into a peer-to-peer internet bounded by energy that creates an entirely new world. And so selfishly, I wanted to be involved in that. When I think about, I knew that Bitcoin was repricing everything else, but so at first I had a hedge in Bitcoin, and I was spending most of my time in what we just described. And I thought, I'm a hypocrite, right? Yeah, I'll be protected, but I'm spending my time and energy on a whole bunch of company boards in the existing space. And every time a company wins there, money has to be manipulated faster to be able to drive up prices. So, and so I thought, if I know this and I can see it coming, and I can see similar to what I saw in the internet, kind of the best and the brightest were moving in this space. What am I doing spending 90% of my time in the fiat world? Right. I'm going to spend it all in this, and I'll tell you, it's been remarkable, because you get to see that I didn't think I'd have another chance to do this, like in the early days of the internet. I remember thinking, wow, people don't see this. People don't see what's coming, and the type of talent that existed there. It was your brain was on fire all the time, because it was just, you're learning at such a rate from some of some super smart and dedicated entrepreneurs and such, and capital. This is bigger. This is way bigger, because it's the same as the internet, but the best and brightest, but it's aligned with where humans are going, and so it's more meaningful. And so the type of people, the type of integrity that is built into the space, the type of people that actually understand this and are building, it's so much more powerful than the internet was.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I talk about it all the time, and you see it if you go to a Bitcoin conference. The mainstream wants to tell us that we align on identities, black, woman, male, straight, gay, whatever it may be. But we align on values. And there's some values that I think are more important than others, like freedom and human flourishment, for example. And so to the point that you're making, sort of Bitcoin has attracted the people that care about those types of topics. And when you're in some of these Bitcoin events, I mean, you can just feel it. You can just feel the vibration. You can feel the energy in the room, so to speak. And so to your point, it's attracted the best and the brightest. And really, maybe crypto has almost sort of helped that, right, as this great filtering mechanism. Because if you only care about the money, you're going to go to the crypto side. And if you go to the Bitcoin side, you're basically admitting to take less money and to go the long, hard way. And so only because of your values.
There isn't an entrepreneur in our portfolio, or I don't think in the Bitcoin space, that would take money from VCs that were crypto VCs. Because you don't want a shareholder that's misaligned with your at that level, at an integrity level, right? Or that you have to teach about a protocol that's so different. Can you imagine trying to take money from somebody who had no clue about what we're talking about right now? Right. Your values aren't aligned. And so why this is expanding, and why it's such a beautiful space. And if you just look at the portfolio success and what's happening in the companies that we funded already, I literally can't believe I get to do it. I can't believe I get to work with these brilliant people, creating this value for other people, and they're creating value for themselves and the companies out of creating staggering value for other people and bringing on billions of people to this asset class. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.